Hi everyone, I'm Chris Murray, owner of Elevation Wheel Company. Really excited today. We're going to show you how we build wheels. This is my specialty. This is what I've been doing for years. My company's probably 80% wheel building. I've done production level work. I've built wheels for track tandems doing 4,000 watts. I've built wheels for touring bikes going around the world. Got wheels well over 20,000+ miles. These methods work really well for me. While I know there's a lot of different ways you can build a wheel that works well, this is what's always had good results for me. So let me show you how we do it.
So here are a few tools that will make this job a whole lot easier. The nipple shuffle box makes lacing a whole lot quicker. Good quality spoke wrenches, tension gauge, the EVT nipple loader, all great tools. So I like to prep the spokes with Wheelsmith spoke prep. You put a dab on the spokes, roll them together, makes it super quick, super easy, things are nice and even. Let that dry, and then after that I like to throw some anti-seize over the top. It helps keep things moving freely after a couple of years. So now we will start the first spoke about 90 degrees to the right of the logo. That helps line up the logo with the valve hole. Start the first spoke at the spoke hole that's two to the right of the valve. Once you get that in, you're just going to alternate on your hub shell doing every other spoke on the drive side. And then at the rim, we're going to skip and do every fourth spoke. So one spoke, skip 3 holes, put another spoke in, do that the whole way around, just follow that pattern. Once I get them in, I like to bend the spokes around the flange. It just kind of helps things sit nice and level and not be all springy and awkward. Next up, you go to the non-drive side flange. Drop the spoke just to the left of the spoke on the drive side, and then at the rim also just to the left of that. I'll link to some things that'll help this. It was kind of awkward to film. There's some text that's easier to follow along rather than trying to keep up with the video. But like always, just follow this pattern around. It's really just 4 steps following a pattern. Same thing, I like to bend the spokes around the flange a little bit. It helps make things a little smoother. Now you'll twist the hub clockwise from the drive side until it stops, and then drop your spokes in this way, and then this is where you decide if the wheel's gonna be laced 2 cross, 3 cross, 4 cross, simply based on the number of crossings you do. So you can see I'm pointing out the crosses. One will go over, it'll always go over, under, or just over if it's 1 cross. The number of spokes you choose will be the deciding factor on how many crosses you like to do.
Okay, now it is time to tension the wheel. This is really where all of the magic happens, you could say. This is what makes the difference between an okay wheel and a great wheel. Things we really need to emphasize: you need very even spoke tension. Ideally 5% variance, 10%'s okay, but for like a nice hand-built wheel, I wouldn't want to go beyond 10% variance. But yeah, even spoke tension, we're going to stress relieve it thoroughly, and just constantly be checking each one of the metrics that are important as we go along. So true, dish, round, all of that good stuff. But first we start by lubricating the spoke nipples. After we go ahead and add the tri-flow to the spoke nipples, next we need to run everything into a starting point. I really like this tool from Problem Solvers called the Holy Driver. Great name, even better tool. The The goal basically is to run each one of these spoke nipples to an even starting point. So if you don't have one of these, you can count threads and run them in until there's about a thread showing or 0 thread showing. Just something you can be consistent with. With this tool, it automatically stops at the right spot on every single one, so it saves you a ton of time, and it's only $20 or $30. So very worth it if you're going to be doing a lot of these. So get these ran in. Once those are all at a nice even starting point, you want to go ahead and bring a little bit of tension into the wheel. So pretty light tension, 20 or 30 kilograms of force. Basically the spokes will still be easy to squeeze, but there won't be anything that's completely loose. I like to start with these Park loop wrenches. They're a little bit faster than the DT wrench that I finished the wheel with. Yeah, this is for speed at the beginning. The DT I finish with because it saves your hands when you're building wheels all day. Just this little bit of extra leverage makes a world of difference as far as all day comfort. So bring these in. Usually, most rear wheels, you'll end up starting with a turn of spoke tension on, or a single turn on the spoke nipple on the drive side, and then you'll go back through and do about 3 turns on every single spoke nipple. That'll usually bring it to a good starting point and get the wheel close to dish. Once I get everything to have a tiny bit of tension in it, you can still see pretty loose. I like to take a screwdriver, stick it between the spokes, so it's basically bending the spokes towards the flange. That way they've got a little straighter path to the rim. I think this helps a lot with long-term durability. On that, I'm not pushing super hard, just enough to bend the spoke around the flange. That way it doesn't kind of bow out and go back in towards the hub. After that, I'll just give each spoke a decent squeeze all the way around, just to make sure everything's seated properly. And then add a little bit more spoke tension. So I'm going to go with 2 turns on this one, and then we're going to check the tension balance. After you've got a fair bit of tension in these, I like to go through, squeeze all of the spokes one more time. What this does is it helps make sure everything's settled into the rim. That way you're not dropping tension once you start riding the wheel. The last thing you want on a newly built wheel is for it to continue to drop tension after you first start riding it. This helps minimize that to the point where realistically you shouldn't have to even do any touch-up truing, or if you do, very, very minimal. But more often than not, I ship these wheels off, never see them again. People ride them for years. But that'll make a big difference in helping keep things to tension once the wheel starts being ridden. If you're doing a lot of these wheels, I like to put gloves on. I just didn't throw them on for the video because they're just ugly gardening gloves. But they do help save your hands, especially if you're using bladed spokes. So now that we've got everything kind of settled in, we've got some tension in the wheel, we're going to balance the spoke tension. How I like to do that is actually pluck each spoke like it's a guitar string. You just go all the way around the spokes. Like there you can hear, first spoke is a little bit lower tension than the other. Add a little spoke tension. Now they're even. So you want to do this all the way around the wheel on both sides. You'll also notice I like to put my finger on the spoke I'm turning. It lets me feel if it's the spoke twisting or if it's a spoke nipple twisting. If the spoke's just twisting or if the spoke wrench is twisting the whole spoke, you're not really making a correction. You're just winding it up, and as soon as you ride that wheel, it's going to come undone and knock the wheel out of true. So I like to feel what the spoke is doing with a finger on the spoke, and then also when I'm tightening the spokes, I'll go a little bit past where I want to go and then bring the spoke wrench back. Those two things make a world of difference when it comes to eliminating spoke windup. Just another little detail that makes a big difference in how well your wheel stays true after you get some miles on it. Okay, now that we have a little bit of tension into the wheel, we need to start bringing it into true. How we do that is tightening spokes opposite of the direction we want to pull it. So this spoke is connected to the drive side flange. So if I were to tighten this spoke, it will pull the rim towards the drive side flange. If I tighten this spoke that's attached to the non-drive side flange, it'll pull the rim towards that flange. And then on the vertical true, if you want to pull the rim in towards the hub, you tighten two pairs, or a pair of spokes, and then I'll bring the rim up a little bit. If you want to let the rim relax a little bit, you take those two pairs of spokes and you were to loosen them a little bit. The key with all of this is small corrections, so quarter of a turn at a time. Especially now that we have some spoke tension, we want to make sure when we tighten the spoke we go past where you want to go and then back just a little bit to minimize windup. And then yeah, just keep nice and even turn, or keep your adjustments minimal. The goal is to keep the spoke tension as balanced as we possibly can. So just slowly work your way around, take patience. Have patience, this part can take a little bit of time, but it's definitely worth it to get it right. So here you can see it's dragging on this side, so I'm going to take the non-drive side spoke, tighten them a little bit, and it'll start to bring that wheel true. Throw your spoke wrench on the ground, grab the other one. Another reason it's nice to have two spoke wrenches close by. But we'll go all the way around the rim until it's pretty true laterally. I'd say within a millimeter, half a millimeter or so is the goal here. And then we will move on to the vertical. So we're pretty good here, so I'm going to go ahead and move the indicators to the bottom of the rim. So on the park stand, you tighten the one on the bottom, loosen this so these indicators can come in a little bit, and then bring them into the rim. So we'll start working on the vertical true now. So you may be hard to see, but there's a low spot there. So I'll tighten that quarter of a turn at a time. Sometimes it's also easier to listen. You can hear the indicator drags there, but stops dragging here, so I like to count pairs of spokes. So 2, 4. So really just dragging around these 4 spokes. I mean, it's got a high spot around these 4 spokes, so I will loosen these, and that will let the rim come towards the indicator, and we'll keep it a little more consistent. So you can hear that's the only point it doesn't touch is between these spokes. So 2, 4, 6. So I'll loosen these 6 spokes a quarter turn. And then we'll just work our way around, shooting for within a half a millimeter or so of round. The better you can get it, obviously great, but I wouldn't sacrifice even spoke tension to get the wheel perfectly true. A tiny bit of movement is okay as long as your spoke tension's nice and even. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this truing up, and then we'll check the dish out. So now that our wheel is true both vertically and laterally, we want to check the dish. The dish is simply, is the rim centered over the hub? There's a couple ways you can do it. Ideally, you'll use a dishing gauge. If you don't, actually, dishing gauge. Ideally, that's what you'll use. If you don't have a dishing gauge, you can pull the wheel out of the stand like this, flip it around, and tighten it down. So you want to keep an eye on where the indicators is. It was almost touching prior, now there's a decent sized gap. So that means that the wheel most likely needs to come towards the brake side. So loosen it back up. Yeah, probably a little towards the brake side. That's not as accurate. That's why I like to use a disengage. If you're going to be doing this frequently, it's definitely worth the investment. They're relatively cheap. But to check the dish, you want to set these pads up to where they touch the edges of the rim, and then slide your indicator into the end of the hub axle. Make sure it's touching. Move to the other side. Check the gap. This is actually pretty spot on right now. So, since our dish is really good, we're going to start checking the spoke tension. We do that with a tension gauge. I use the Park one. There's nicer ones out there, but the Park one, as long as you keep it calibrated, it actually works pretty well. That's why I have a calibration gauge. It's worthwhile getting a calibration gauge anyways if you're going to do this a lot. But again, wheels are my specialty, so that's why I have a little bit nicer gauge. But we want to check our tension, check the number on the gauge, and refer to the chart that comes with the gauge. The part chart looks kind of like this. You use it to look at spoke size versus the number on the chart. This is about a turn away from being to the ideal tension. So I'm going to add a half a turn of spoke tension all the way around and double check it. So after I added that half turn, I'm going to double check spoke tension. We're pretty close to where we want to be for final tension. We're around 100 to 110 kilograms of force. Ideally on these rims we'll go up to about 120, 130. Personally, I'm a big believer in higher spoke tension being great for the durability of a wheel as long as the rim can take it. Most modern rims can. Some rims, like the Stan's MK series, doesn't do well with high tension though. So watch those spoke tension charts. Don't go above what the manufacturer recommends as the maximum, but try to stick near that maximum. So we're around that 100, 110 kilograms of tension. So I like to go through and do another round of stress relieving, which is just squeezing pairs of spokes. You'll see how much tension you drop just by doing that. So the goal is to add tension, stress relieve, add tension, stress relieve until you no longer see a tension change after stress relieving, because that's how you know the wheel's pretty settled to where it's going to be. So another trick on knowing where you're at, always start and stop from the valve. If you don't do that, you can also count. So it's a 32 hole wheel, so I know if I squeeze 8 pairs of 4, I'm gonna have to, I will be all the way around the wheel without even looking at where I'm at. So we'll double check that. We just dropped another 10 or 15 kilograms of tension from where we were. So you want to add that back in. So I'm going to do another half a turn of tension. And then that should get us pretty close to where we want to be. After that, I'll do some touch-up truing, double check the dish, and we should be pretty spot on. At this point, when you're close to the end of having the wheel finished, you want to make small corrections. So quarter turn, half turn, definitely no more than that. So we're pretty consistently between about 110, 115. So that's pretty much where we want to be. The nice thing about doing the tension balancing earlier is rarely at this point do you have to do any corrections for tension imbalance. So now that we're pretty close on tension, dish, all of that, we'll just fine tune every little thing to be spot on. So I'll correct the true, I'll double check the dish, make any adjustments to correct the dish if I need to, So we'll check dish. It just barely touches there. Here, there's a small gap. It's a very small gap. So when I check the dish, it just needs to come a small amount towards the drive side, like half a millimeter or so. So one trick I like to do is true to that side of the wheel. So you can take something to block off this indicator, keep it out of the way. That way when you're truing it, you're only pulling the rim towards the direction you want to go. So this will most likely get us exactly where we want our dish to be. Another round of stress relieving. And our tensions are right where we left them. So double check the true again. So we just checked our true, and true's really good, tension's where we want it. So one final check of the dish. And the dish is right where we want it. So at this point you're ready to clean the rim up, throw on some tubeless tape, and mount your tire and go ride. So that's all there is to building a wheel. It's not that complicated. It looks a lot worse than it is, but a lot of those little details will make a world of difference in how well your wheel holds up. Again, there's a lot of ways you can build a wheel. These are the methods that work well for me, so well that I guarantee every single wheel I build for life to never break a spoke and free touch-up truing. So even if you were to put 20,000-30,000 miles on your wheel, if you ever break a spoke, I will cover it for you outside of crashes, running it over with your car, stuff that just wheels aren't meant for. But yeah, they work really well. If you have any questions, leave them in the comments below. And if you guys found this helpful, go ahead and click the subscribe button in the bottom right hand corner. That definitely helps me out, and it helps you know when there's content uploaded that hopefully you find of interest. There'll be more how-to videos, pro tips, bike industry interviews, some race coverage. I'm going to try to do a lot with this channel. I'm just kind of getting started, so looking forward to seeing how it progresses. But again, if there's any comments, leave them below and I'll do my best to answer for you. Thanks for watching. Bye.